I remember feeling so strange as I sat in a musical at Busch Gardens watching Irish step dancers do their thing. And I'm not an emotional person, but something started to happen on the inside of my chest that I just couldn't put my finger on. It took me a few moments, but I started to realize I was having a feeling that that's what was happening. It would be about 24 hours later that I realized I was pregnant. And in January of 2011, I gave birth to a little girl named Adora. Adora was such a joy. I remember I'd go in to wake her up from her naps, and she would be smiling so wide and big that I would think, as I looked at her face, that's got to hurt. She was born an extreme extrovert. She loved people. We would walk through Walmart and we could not get very far because she made contact with absolutely every person we walked by, and she'd smile and greet them. On January 31st of 2013, I was headed on a short overnight trip, and so I distinctly remember I can still see her face as I said goodbye and I kissed her on her forehead, and I told her that I loved her and that I would see her the next day. What I had no idea is the disaster that was heading in my direction. It would be the very next morning that I woke up to a phone call, my husband frantic and breathless, telling me that he went to wake up Adora and she was not breathing. After receiving the phone call, my friends and I hopped in our car and we sped toward Lynchburg. And the whole time I remember thinking my worst nightmare is happening, like I'm living my worst nightmare. And I can tell you what I wanted in that moment. And it was not to hear the words of my friends. It was not to worry about what was going to happen the next day. The only thing I wanted in that moment was to see and to know the face of God. He is the only thing that felt stable to me. I just needed to see him. I just needed to know him. I just needed to come close to him because I knew in that moment it would be the only way that I knew I would survive the coming weeks and months of grief. That moment of desperate need to see God, I didn't know then, but would continue for the next 2 years as we have grieved and mourned the loss of our baby girl. The question for you is not if you will suffer. The question for you is when you suffer, what will your response be? Suffering will look different for each one of us. For some of you, that may look like a husband who has betrayed you and you are deeply hurt and broken. For others of you, it may be infertility that you're struggling with. Month after month, you're deeply longing for a baby, only to be disappointed time and time again. For others of you, it may be a job loss or not able to make ends meet. And for some of you, it will be receiving a phone call from a doctor that devastates your family and you have no idea how you'll make it through. What we see in the book of Job is that it is possible to suffer in ways that bring us toward God and not away from him. Job experienced incredible loss, and we see that he did not suffer perfectly, and we also see that suffering is not pretty. But what suffering can do and what God allows it to do is for us to see his face in such a way that it leaves us in awe and wonder of who he is, and we are forever changed.